طالعة أنا نايفة محمرة ديجا وميتة الكونيكسيون. هاي توا تشعل شوية خضرة تطلع وتطيح ترى شوف. فما وحدة كمان. صوتي مش هبدأ.
Test 1, 2, essai, vertige, test 2, 2, test, essai, test, vertige, test 4, essai, test, vertige, test, vertige, voilà, test 1, test 1, 2, essai, test 1, 1, 1, test 1, 2, essai, test 1,
تحت
test, test, test,
طلعت خضرة
1,
بيحل توا ترى
2, 2,
بيحل ترى شوف لحظة توا
test 1, 2, essai,
اسمعني
test, test 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, test vertige, test 4, essai à 2, essai 1, 2, test 1, test 1, 2, essai, 8, 8, test 1, 2, test 1, 2, 2, essai, 1, test 1, 2, 2, 2, essai, 1, 2,
وي
2,
يلا
test, test,
test 2, 2, test 1, test 2, 2, 2. Test 1, 2, 2. C, 2, 2, test. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. C, 2, test. Test 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Test. Test. Test.
أيها السادة والسيدات، السلام عليكم ومرحبا بكم في الجلسة العلمية الأولى. Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour et bienvenue à cette première session technique. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to this first session on Tunisia exploration and development opportunities. We have 5 minutes delay. But it's raining outside and the traffic is not that good. Okay, so we will start with the first presentation on hydrocarbon prospectivity and of Mrezga open block, Gulf of Hammamet Basin, eastern offshore Tunisia. And this presentation will be given by Miss or Mrs. Heba Latiri. She is a geophysicist working at ETAP since 2012. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Geology, a Geoscience Engineering degree, and professional MSc in Geophysics. So you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Ali. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'll be speaking about Mrezga open block in Gulf of Hammamet Basin and its underexplored potential. First, let me give you a short overview on the Gulf of Hammamet Basin. It's in eastern offshore Tunisia. It covers around 31,000 square kilometers in a water depth ranging from 50 meters to 1,200 meters. And for the time being, this basin holds 3 open blocks, El Garsi, Neapolis, and Mrezga, 4 exploration permits, Karkwen, Bargu, Kabudia, and Mehdia, and 8 oil licenses. To look closer at Mrezga open block, well, it is located on the eastern margin of Gulf of Hammamet Basin, adjacent to the marine frontier line with Italy. It covers 3,352 square kilometers in a water depth ranging from 270 meters to 1,200 meters, close to the Pantelleria Graben. The exploration activity started on this block in 2005, and the last operator was Cooper Energy from 2010 and abandoned the block in 2015. This block is actually located in an important and very interesting area because it's surrounded by 4 fields. The first one is the Zibibo fields in Italy, which tested 550 BOPD from Birsa formation middle Miocene. Tazarka field, it's an old field. It has produced 22 million barrel oil as well in the Birsa, from the Birsa formation. Then there's the Birsa concession, still undeveloped license, but it holds oil initially in place, 70 million barrel oil equivalent. And finally, the Udna concession that holds 24 million barrel oil and has already produced 10 million barrel oil. From a geologic point of view, and here I'm showing a synthetic lithostratigraphic chart, and of the Gulf of Hammamet Basin. And it shows a succession of multiple extensions and compressions starting from late Triassic until recently in geologic ages. And the major compression, the last major compression is occurred on the Atlantic phase, which is equivalent to the Alpine phase in Europe. And the latest extension is the opening of the Pantelleria Graben happening on the Pliocene. So all of these tectonic events have made of the Mrezga open block a multiphasic architecture with multiple hiatuses and conformities, basin inversions, and multi-directional faulting. Architecture of the basin is done with horsts and graben, and we also see folds, drag folds, related to strike-slip faults. In this area, we also see volcanic intrusions, pre-Miocene and late Pliocene. So to work on Mrezga open block, we had the opportunity to work on the neighboring fields and the neighboring wells, because unfortunately there aren't any wells drilled inside the Mrezga open block. And if you look at the wells here on the upper figure, you see that there are oil shows, gas condensate in the Miocene and in the Cretaceous as well. So we have elaborated this chart done after the correlation of a north-south correlation of the neighboring wells, and it shows the presence of two source rocks, the Fahdin, Albion, and the Budabu source rock, the presence of multiple reservoirs. The first two, it's actually Birsa sands and Birsa carbonates. Then there's the Ain Ghrab, aged Langian, these are limestones, and there's the Abiad fractured limestone as well. And there are three seal rocks. So to look closer to these reservoirs, the Birsa reservoir, which is the main target in this area, holds four reservoir layers: the upper sands, middle sands, intra-Birsa carbonates, and the lower sands. The four reservoirs, the four layers actually, they are producing on the neighboring fields. And I invite you to look at this beautiful map done by Cooper Energy on 2010. And the yellow colors refer to the Birsa sands, and the blue color refer to the intra-Birsa carbonates. So you see that there's a good extension, but in the eastern part of the block, since the quality of the seismic deteriorates, the basin gets deeper, and we don't have well controls, we don't really constrain the extension of these reservoirs in the eastern part of the block. Now, in the second figure, I just show the Birsa sands. That's to say what is the average thickness of the sands. It's something about 250 meters of the entire Birsa reservoirs. Now, for the second reservoir, which is the Ain Ghrab reservoir, this is a map also done by Cooper Energy, and it shows the chains of the occurrence of the reservoir, and this chain decreases towards the east, which is normal, and it shows, well, this doesn't say, but the Ain Ghrab reservoir could reach 146 meters in thickness with a good porosity, 15%, and it has flowed 3,500 BOPD in Mamoura field. Now for the third reservoir, which is the Abiad reservoir. This is a chalky limestone reservoir, aged Upper Cretaceous, Campanian Maastrichtian. And if we look to the correlation, the well correlation on the western border of the block, you can find the Abiad almost everywhere on the wells with an average thickness of 100 meters. The porosity could reach 15% with a low permeability, but it's greatly enhanced by the fractures. And it has tested 12.5 million cubic feet and 921 barrel oil day in Tazarka field. Now for the source rocks, two main source rock I've already mentioned, and these are the Lower Fahdin Albion source rock and Budabu source rock. The Budabus is type 2 oil prone, and the lower Fahdin is type 2 to 3, and it's gas prone, oil and gas prone. Now we come to the geophysical evaluation. And to do that, I had the opportunity to see 5,657 kilometer 2D of vintage seismic. Unfortunately, the quality of this seismic wasn't that good, but Cooper Energy acquired 600 square kilometer 3D on the western part of the block, which is the most prospective area of the block. And I focused my interpretations on the 3D. Here, I show you an image, an example of the 3D quality. Even if it's a broad size 3D, the quality isn't that good, and you can't see good continuity, and you can't clearly see the faults. And this is what I also show on here on the attribute energy, because it only shows the seafloor, the Messinian nonconformity, and the Ain Ghrab, as I've interpreted here. The thing is, there's also what we think to be the volcanic intrusions inside the Miocene. Now, the main target is the Birsa, but we don't see it this good. And we have considered that since we see the Ain Ghrab, it's a very good seismic horizon reflector. We see the Ain Ghrab, we consider that the Birsa has exactly the same architecture as Ain Ghrab, and in more or less homogeneous thickness above the Ain Ghrab, we have considered the Ain Ghrab as a guide to the evaluation of Birsa reservoir. And here's the two-way time of Ain Ghrab, as I showed earlier. And it exhibits many prospects. It's more than 10 structures identified on top of Langian reservoir. All these structures are fault-related, and with the 3D volume, we had the opportunity to constrain 4 of these structures, which are delta, gamma, La Marsa Abdib, and alpha, as you can see here. Okay, but when I was doing the interpretations, I've also noticed that there's something awkward about the seafloor. You see here, that's the Birsa bank, and you see those 2 ridges coming out the Birsa bank. I looked at those 2 ridges, and on the seismic, they appear as it's a hole, actually, on the seafloor. And the succession of these holes form that ridge I show on the map. So I wanted to know what is the origin of these holes. And I was reading articles, and it says that pockmarks, these are called pockmarks, and they are generated by fluid expulsed through the subsurface and reaching the surface. And during the expulsion, so it puts back the sediments. I mean, it drives the sediments onto the surface, and this is why we see a hole. And I started running a few attributes, and this one I'm showing on the right hand side. It's the average minimum amplitude attribute. And this one I'm showing on the right hand side. It's the average minimum amplitude. And another layer, which is minus 20 milliseconds below it. So the difference here and here on the ridges, the difference is positive. That would say that the amplitude of the second layer of minus 20 milliseconds is lower than the amplitude of the sea surface, which is not usually the case, because usually when we go deeper, amplitude increase, velocity increase, attribute. And this one I'm showing on the right hand side. It's the average dimming of amplitude gas. Okay. So now we have to know what type of gas is this. Gas on the surface could provide from mud volcanoes, from methanogenic microorganism, or from thermogenic oil and gas. Since I don't have the ability to go and sample from the sea surface, I had to find out more about the origin of this gas. And if it is a thermogenic oil and gas, there's probably a problem of leakage from the reservoir. And this is what I have found out, that actually, yeah, here and there, I have two major faults on the top of the reservoir. And this is when things start to get less funny, because I have two structures bordered by these two main faults. So I kept reading and trying to find a way to keep this block very interesting. And I came across a study done by Mr. Roar Hegland from Statoil. This gentleman did a study over 46 fields in Gulf of Mexico, on fields in Nigeria and fields in the North Sea. And what he has done is creating a chimney cube over all these fields and try to statistically classify those fields accordingly to the chimney morphology and the efficiency of the trap. And he has summarized all his job in this table, where he classifies, where he has done 4 classes for hydrocarbon reservoirs. I'm not talking about the 5th class, it's mud volcanoes. We're not talking about mud volcanoes here. So all his fields are within 4 classes. So if we have a gas cloud, it's a good trap efficiency. Here, when the gas chimney doesn't reach the surface, it's an excellent. Here, when the gas chimney breaks the seal but doesn't reach the surface, it's fairly good. But here it breaks the seal and reaches the sea surface, and it's poor. So I wanted to do the same, but unfortunately my seismic wasn't good enough to conduct very advanced studies. But I tried to look at many attributes results, and here I have this north-south line, that's the seismic, the original seismic, that crossed the delta structure, the Birsa, La Marsa Abdib field, and Alpha. Remember the location of the structures. And I have results with this attributes, which is the instantaneous frequency attribute. This is to not to be confused with the frequency of the wave inside the seismic. This attribute actually represents the attenuation of the geology. And one more time, if we talk about attenuation of geology, we talk about attenuation of amplitude, we talk about gas. And if we look closely here, on La Marsa Abdib structure, remember that structure which is bordered by that fault reaching the sea surface, you see that blue color reaching the surface? Blue color is the least instantaneous frequency here. And this tells that, yes, I have a gas chimney going up there. Now if we look to the Birsa field, the blue color is disseminated, something like a cloud. And I have 2 more structures, which is the delta, the chimney doesn't reach the surface, and the alpha, the chimney, I mean the blue color, doesn't reach the surface. So I wanted to correlate with a job done by Mr. Roar Hegland in this table. And if I consider Birsa field in this situation, good, I got gas cloud. And if I consider La Marsa Abdib in this situation, it is poor, I still have 2 very interesting structures, which are alpha and delta, that could be excellent or fair to good. And for me, that's already a good result, but I need more data. Now, to finish, I just have to give you a few numbers about the alpha structure. It could reach 8.75 square kilometer in area, and this structure would have as original oil in place 58.4 million barrel oil, which is a little bit more than twice the original oil in place in Udna structure. I'm concluding. Mrezga open block is located in a prolific petroleum region where fields are producing since the late 70s. Many prospects are identified, and with 3 reservoirs not exceeding 2,000 meter depth. And with the study of gas escapement features, we were able to assess the efficiency of fault sealing on the borders of the main prospects, and by analogy to fields in the Gulf of Mexico, Nigeria, and North Sea, this approach actually ranked up 2 of the 4 observed structures within the area of the 3D volume. What I recommend, and it's a need, I mean, it's an urgent need, is to drill a well inside the Gulf, inside the Mrezga open block. And this is to constrain the extension of the reservoir and to know more about the quality of these reservoirs. And one more thing is the 3D allowed us, even if the 3D wasn't of that good quality, but it allowed us to go through other more advanced studies. So we surely need more 3D seismic on this area. And thank you for your attention. I finished.
Thank you for sincerely this nice and interesting presentation.
Thank you.
I think we have time for questions. She consumed only 17 minutes, so we are on the safe side. Yes.
Thank you, Hiba, for this excellent presentation.
Thanks.
Your interpretation concerning chimneys of gas and the mud volcanoes is near the reality, because in this area published works have shows that the Miocene clays are engaged in clay domes along fault corridors. Donc for me, for example, I'm not surprised for this interpretation. And the good thing that you have utilized the seismic attributes as frequency and amplitude. And this improve your interpretation. I'm convinced that the hypotheses of gas bookmark are real and join the previous interpretations for the Neogene deposits in this area.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Murad.
Thank you very much, Hebe, for this excellent presentation. And I would like to say that we are proud of you as ETAP staff.
Thank you.
My question is about Cretaceous, because you show only the Miocene. And do you think that the Cretaceous has also potential in this block? Surely.
I mean, the thing is that on the seismic, we cannot see the Cretaceous, and we don't have control. Below the Ain Ghrab, I only see something that could be multiples or could be Abiad Cretaceous. And the wells, we don't have wells in Mrezga open block. So the wells reaching the Cretaceous are bored in the block, and I mean reaching top of Cretaceous, probably not crossing the entire Cretaceous. And sometimes if it's crossing the entire Cretaceous, it's something like 100 meters, and there are shows in the Abiad. So why not having the Abiad as a potential reservoir in Mrezga open plug too?
Thank you.
Sure. Hi, thanks for these excellent presentations.
Thank you.
My question will be related with the Birsar reservoirs package.
Excuse me? Excuse me.
Thank you so much for your excellent presentation. By the way, my name is Hassan Güney from Dragon Oil, Dubai-based oil company. So my question will be specific on the Birsar reservoir sections. You mentioned that in the Birsar reservoirs, you have some carbonate facies.
Yeah.
Okay. So this carbonate facies is, what kind of facies is this one? Do you have enough well data that confirm that the presence of this carbonate reservoir
would be prospective in the area or not?
Yeah, the carbonate, you're talking about the carbonate of the Miocene, right? Yeah, these intrabusa carbonate, they have flowed. There are tests and they have flowed oil, actually. They have good porosity, and that's the only Miocene layer I can see on the seismic. It's there, I know it's there. And it has potential, of course. And actually, it's probably our first target within the Birsa formation. So why not? I mean, for me, this block has many good aspects, very positive hints, but I'm sure that everything needs more studies, very focused studies. With the data we have, I did everything I could, but I'm convinced that there is potential in many reservoirs, not in one. Yeah, well, you're welcome.
Yeah, you mentioned the fact that this is the only data sets you have. It means that there were no seabed sampling, for instance, in order to address whether it's only gas or if there's any heavy components?
No, there isn't.
Okay.
Actually, the exploration didn't last long on this area.
Yeah.
Exploration studies, I mean, there was only seismic acquiring and geological studies, not sampling, not gravimetry, nothing.
Okay. And have you discussed with geophysicists in order to know whether we can improve the seismic quality by reprocessing, or if we just have to reshoot seismic?
Okay, so the 3D volume acquired there, it's, they acquired the PSTM with a broad-size technique, hoping that the quality would be good. But I think in the acquisition parameter, there was a tiny problem with the depth of the source. This is what caused, a small penetration of the wave. This is why we don't have a good resolution and good penetration. I only see the Ain Ghrab around 1,750 meter. They have processed a PSDM after that, but lacking data, they don't have a time depth relationship, so processing a PSDM, simulating the time depth curve, it was very smooth, I know that acquisition could give better results in this area.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think to respect the time and the audience, we have to move to the next presentation. Sorry, you have a break. Coffee break.
I
have a question for her, but I will not ask it. Before moving to the next presentation, we have to precise that this study, although presented by Mrs. Hiba Latiri, was conducted by both Mrs. Latiri and Mrs. Ramla bin Rabah al-Azzaz. It's very important.
Yes, for the correlation, for the geology work, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, let's pass to the second. Let's go to the second paper concerning hydrocarbon prospectivity in the Jebel open acreage and Chat Basin, southern of Tunisia, which will be presented by Mrs. Merdessi and Mrs. Sarsar. Mrs. Shada Merdessi, she holds a master degree in applied geophysics, applied petroleum, and also Mrs. Sarsar, she holds a master degree in hold on, just let me get that. In applied geology, right? They both work for ETAP since, and they also work in open acreage and data acquisitions. You both have the floor. You can present it. Anyway, you have 25 minutes. Okay.
So good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to our presentation. Today we will present the hydrocarbon prospectivity of Jebel block. For that, we will start with, I will follow this agenda. Excuse me. So I will follow this agenda. I will begin by an introduction of the block, the geological overview of its drilling activity within, and I will present a briefing for the petroleum system of the Jbil open block. The last part will be presented by my colleague Hibo, so it's my colleague. So, Jbil open block is located in the south center of Tunisia. Its location in vicinity of the hydrocarbon, many hydrocarbon fields as Frenich, Sabria, recently Ghrib, and Begel Tarfa increase the hydrocarbon prospectivity of our block. So, the Jbil open block is surrounded by many geological domains. To the north, we have the east-west short range. To the east, we have the Dahar range followed by the collapsed Shfera range, and to the south, we have the stable platform. For a structural point of view, it's worthy to note that the Galsa faulted system, as well as the Shfara faulted system, has contributed to the geodynamical evolution of this block since the Paleozoic. So, the little stratigraphic chart shows that the series ranging from the Quaternary to the Precambrian to the Cambrian series, which is interrupted with many gaps and hiatus due to the successive tectonic phases, compressive and distensive ones. This latter had generated many features. We show Houston graben, range faults, tilted blocks, many discontinuity or unconformities. Also, we have a distance stratigraphic types like a reef, splash reef, or pinching out structure. To better understand the geodynamic evolution within the block, we have chosen two main correlations. The east-west one shows two main basins, the Seg basin of the Shot, which is dipping to the east of our block, and we have the truncated Paleozoic basin. In details, in fact, we can distinguish that the Triassic Syrian pinching out toward the east and the Paleozoic Permian reefs pinching out toward the west of the block. The north-south correlation show an interesting thing that the pinching out of the Tagi or the Triassic series towards the north or the east, and the pinching out of the truncation of the Paleozoic towards the west. Drilling activity had started early. So it started in 1989 to explore the Permian reefs. Then, after the discovery of Tarfa and Begel concession, the exploration moved on to the exploration of the Tagi reservoir. It's worthy to note that many wells such as Haj Ibrahim and Begel had reached the Ordovician, which has recorded many shows in this level. All wells are plugged and abandoned within the block, with many shows within. So we can say that there is two main proven system within and one potential. The Triassic reservoir aged back to Ladinian or Lower Carnian. It consists on It consists on interbedded sandstone with the shale and siltstone. The thickness it depends on the place. Mostly it's ranging from 20 to 60 meters. In short basin, the environment deposit environment is mainly continental to fluvial. It is a producing reservoir in Begel Tarfa concession. So, the etho thicknesses map show the decreasing of the thicknesses toward the east, which is pinching out, and we can say there is no deposit of a Tagi reservoir within the place. The geometry, the thicknesses, as well as the orientation of sand bodies are commonly influenced by the local tectonic and the paleomorphology of the basin. In details, the Tagi in our region, in the vicinity of Jbil block, is qualified as a good reservoir. It consists on stacked sand bodies with well-connected sand and significant layers. Three reservoirs were defined in a Tarfa and Begel reservoir, R1 and 2 and 3. All of them are producing. So, for the petrophysical characteristic of this reservoir, mainly it is characterized by a good porosity, good permeability, less permeability, which can increase it by early geogenesis or decreasing, depends on the case. Many types of pores were detected in this reservoir. So the seal of this reservoir is efficient. It is the Triassic liasic evaporitic, which can reach more 200 meters. 2000. So move on to the second objective, which is producing in a Gharib concession. So for this reservoir, we consider that is ETAP CHAINE because Al Hamra it's mainly eroded or trunked by some faults. We cannot precise what is the cause of the absence of this reservoir. However, it consists on a tide reservoir with interbedded laminated siltstone and shale, the thickness ranging from 10 to 19, and the deposition environment lower or face may be too littoral. So it is produced also in a Gharib concession. Despite of poor data quality within the block, we can consider the presence of, confirm the presence of this reservoir within our block, which is confirmed by our geophysical study. So, it is dipping to the north and the northeast, and our interpretation is based on 3-point control. For the characteristic of this reservoir, we can consider as heterogenic bedding, complicated reservoir architecture, complicated sandstone. It could be considered as moderate reservoir. So, for the petrophysical characteristic, it is characterized by a good porosity, less than 1 millidar C for permeability, and it is sealed by the intraformational shale. The permeability could enhance it by fractures, and it's worthy to note that the early geogenesis had reduced the quality of the reservoir. So move on to the potential reservoir, which is the Permian. It's worthy to note that there is two types of Permian reservoir. We have the upper Permian reservoir, which is well known in the Tbega outcrop, and we have also the zoomite carbonate system, which is only defined in zoomite well. So it consists mainly in bioerm decametric bioarm constructor. The thickness can be more 1,000 in some places. So, and still until now, it is still a potential one. The map distribution, facet distribution, show that the mixed platform carbonate, also the Permian barrier, could be interesting for hydrocarbon exploration. The petrophysical characteristics that show that it is characterized by a good porosity. We can distinguish an excellent veggie porosity in some wells, and moderate porosity, which is varying. It could be poorly or fairly good to excellent. For sourcing rock, sourcing, we can say that the Vgegira source rock, it's the most defined source rock within the area, which is charging almost of our reservoir. However, Arzel source rock could be contributed minor contribution in charging, and for the potential source rock, we can say that the Permian has a good TOC, which is, can reach 9%. This petroleum chart resume that the petroleum system within Jbil block, the generation, migration, and also the accumulation started from the Paleozoic to the Cenozoic. Many trapping styles were defined. We have a reef, we have host grabens, and tilted block, pinching out structure, and faulted anticline. Here, this section summarizes its geoseismic line that prove that the pathway of migration could be laterally through the discourse and or lateral through the master faults. The pinch out of the Triassic, it's pinching toward the Tpega region. Now I let Shadek complete the geophysical study. Thank you very much.
Okay, let me directly start the geophysical study with the seismic exploration history. So the seismic exploration in the Jbil open block started back to the 70s, to the mid-70s, and the newest seismic acquisition was conducted by Rigu Oil in 2009, the Baz survey. It's only 300 kilometers, short lines short 2D lines. And they reprocessed 1,300 kilometers of the EKV seismic lines. Well, let's focus on the base map. You can see that the block is fully covered by seismic lines, but you see that in the northern part, the coverage is not that well, and also in the crossing the block. Okay, what about the seismic quality, you might say? Well, the seismic quality is bad in some lines and good in others. Well, it's normal because you see that there are different seismic surveys, different sources from different service companies. So we have different qualities, bad and good and medium. And we have some kind of problems like misties between the different surveys, and also misties in the same survey. You might say the problem is statics. That's the worst nightmare of geophysicists. Okay, the northern part of the block it had some very bad lines. You will see some examples. Okay, this is the MT survey. The MT survey, it has a weight drop as a source, and the CEH survey with Vibrothais as a source. Both are old lines. Then bad quality data, the THC survey, 1983, with the Vibrothais as a source, and the CEH survey, 1989, and also Vibrothais as a source. Then with the medium quality, well, I say medium, but some geophysicists might say bad, like really bad. This is the EKV. This is the reprocessed line in 2009 by Rigo Oil, and the Baz survey. This is the Baz survey with the Vibrothais and dynamite as a source. Okay, always remember this scheme with the very bad and the bad and medium quality data, because it's directly related to the interpretation and mapping of the different horizons. Let's move directly to the seismic interpretation. This is a cross line between the HBR1 well and the Baz well. It's a southwest, northeast seismic cross section. And you can see the interpreted horizons, the Ordovician, ETAP chain, and the Taggy horizon, and also the Hercynian unconformity. The other horizons are just speculative. I was not able to interpret those horizons. Okay, for prospect assessment, let's start with the Taggy objective. This is the Taggy depth map, and always remember this scheme. So let me focus on the block of the map. Well, the interpretation was quite, let's say, easy, not easy, well, but remember that we have the KGF well. We are sure that there is a Taggy there. So this part is an interpolation, but we are sure that there is a Taggy in this well, but we don't have enough lines to correlate with that well. So let me focus on this part of the map where the prospects are, the leads are identified. Okay, I call them leads because of the data quality and because they're small structures of 1 to 2 square kilometers. This is the first leads. Our leads are controlled by faults. The first lead, you can see 2 seismic lines where this one is controlled only by 1 fault. Then the second lead controlled by 2 east-west faults. The third lead also between 2 faults. And let me focus here on this map of the Taggy pinch out against the Hercynian unconformity. Okay, we tried to use some attributes, but with this quality of lines, we didn't have enough in a good result, let's say. We tried this cosine attribute on some lines. It gave a good result, in others not. You can see in this is the interpretation. This is the Taggy pinching against the Hercynian unconformity. And this is the cosine attribute showing the pinching out of the Taggy horizon. Let's go directly to the Ordovician target, the block limits. Then the first prospect, and it's with this map of the reservoirs distribution and prospect localization. You can see the different reservoirs, the Taggy reservoir, the Ordovician reservoir, and the Permian reservoir. And you can see the prospects located in this area. and the limit of the TAGI defined by the geophysicist, the red one, the purple one defined by the geologist. Let's say geologists are more optimistic. Finally, to conclude, the Jbel open block is located in a prolific petroleum province. The Sabriya, Frenig, and the Ghrib concessions are producing from the Ordovician tight reservoirs. The Ghrib concession is producing from the Ordovician reservoirs, El Achen and El Hamra, at a rate of over 2,000 barrels oil per day. The Tarfa Bagel concession in the western part of the block is producing from the Taghi reservoirs in the 80s. The average daily production estimated to more than 5,000 barrels oil per day. The geopetroleum assessment result confirmed the presence of different leads and prospects in the Jbel open block in both the Taghi and the Ordovician objectives. For a better identification of the Taghi structures, pinch-out and stratigraphic traps, new high-resolution seismic acquisition extremely recommended, let's say 3D. And the exploration should also be focused on deeper targets in the Jbel open block. Thank you.
Well, thank you both young ladies for these presentations. We have 4 minutes for questions, if you have any open questions for those ladies. If there is no questions, we can pass on to the,
Excuse me, I just want to know if you have some explication regarding the wells, failed wells in the block.
The failed well?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe you have made post-drill analysis of this well, and we want to
yes.
know comments about that.
Actually, the exploration in this block was the target in this block was actually the Permian as the first target. Then it, with the discoveries in the Tarfa Bagel in the Taghi reservoir, it was then changed to the Taghi reservoir. So the failure may be the pinching out. You can see that the wells are located outside the Taghi limits. So we don't have any control of this horizon in those wells. And for the Ordovician, those wells didn't attend the Ordovician. We have only 2 wells that reached the Ordovician in the Tarfa Bagel concession. Only 2 wells. The others, they didn't reach the Ordovician.
Okay, thank you for your.
Any more questions? Somebody.
Mesdemoiselles, je vais poser une question. Pour votre pinch-out triasique, vous avez, basé sur la sismique que vous avez une estimation de réserve préliminaire?
Disons que c'est en cours c'est en cours, ce travail est en cours de calcul.
Autrement dit, est-ce que vous avez un hameçon ou non?
Notre hameçon, c'est surtout les concessions à côté.
I have just 2 short questions. The first question is related to the presence of the Hamra quartzite in your leads identified close to Bagel field. Do you have a clear idea which kind of Ordovician reservoir present in this lead? Because what I know in Hajj Ibrahim, most of the Hamra quartzite or the totality of the Hamra quartzite is removed by the Hercynian unconformity, and only the Latchan remain below this Hercynian unconformity.
Yes.
And the second question, do you believe that the amount of hydrocarbon generated by the Fegagira formation could feed prospects or leads located far away from the Elfranic fields?
Thank you very much, Habib. In fact, for the first question, I can say that there is two scenarios. The first one that we predict that the Hamra is totally eroded by the tectonic phases. However, there is another scenario that as the Permian, as the Paleozoic basin has an architecture of horst and graben when it was generated, so maybe in some places we can find the Hamra. And unfortunately for us, there is no point of control. Just three wells we have in fact, excuse me, have the Ordovician series. For the second question, I can say that yes, we believe that Fegagira could feed those reservoirs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, young ladies, and I think we ran out of time, and we have more questions, and we can go to this third session of the day.
And then we move to the next presentation. We invite Mr. Mohammed Bougasha. Who is a petroleum engineer, and he holds also a business administration, an MSc in business administration, and we are awake to listen to you about Zaraat development projects and what's new.
Thank you, sir. So, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for attending this presentation. First, I would like to congratulate the organization committee for their efforts in order to make this event happen, and also I'm pleased to be part of the speakers in order to share with you the outcomes of the Zaraat development project. So, Zaraat is one of the most important discoveries made by Marathon in 1992. It represents approximately 130 million barrel equivalent. It's mainly gas, condensate, and oil. It's good to know that it's let's say this discovery made in the Gulf of Gabes and in El Garia Reservoir. So it's located 80 kilometers offshore in 90-meter water depth. The main specification of this discovery is the highest sour gas content. We have a range of 12 to 48% of CO2, and also a range between 800 and 5,000 ppm of H2S. So here the question is how to deal with this sour gas, how to treat it, and also where we have to inject it or to sequestrate it. Second point is regarding the geological extension that has been proven by the drilling of the Zaraat North 1 in 2010 by Sonde. So there is a geological extension in the reservoir between two blocks, between Zaraat and Jontoy blocks. And for this, we need to agree on a unified plan of development, and also to be also agreed on the unitization and unit operating agreement. So the development objective is to get the first gas and oil in 2022, so as soon as possible, because we are a gas demand country. And also this development would unlock, let's say, the further development of the others discovery in the Gulf of Gabes with the same, let's say, specification of this sour gas. It's good to know, so that from the location point of view, that we can, let's say, beneficiate from the existing surrounding facilities, mainly the gas fields as Rubel and Miskar, And also we have the Ashtar field, which is approximately 45 kilometers away. From the reservoir side, so this Bulgaria is well known in both parts, so in Tunisian side, in Ashtart and Azrubal and in Didon, and from the Libyan side in El Jorf and El Bouri fields. 3 wells has been drilled, so just here I would like to highlight that from those wells, the first one represents 12% of CO2, the second one, Zarat 2, 25%, and Zarat North 1 with 48% of CO2. And here the question, which level we need, let's say, to consider for the treatment, and what is the impact on the investment. From the conventional aspects, so we have the southern track, which was between a joint venture between ETAP and PA Resource, and then ETAP in 2016, by the sale and purchase agreement, we have, let's say, acquired all the interests of PA Resource. Now ETAP is 100% the owner in this Zarat license. From the northern track, so it's under exploration production sharing agreement. Jean Toil is the owner. The previous operator was Sond. And now there is, let's say, a well-progressed marketing process that is, now, let's say, we hope that next, let's say, couple of months, we will get the new operator for Jean Toil, this in order to allow us to further make the engineering and the further assessment. All of this is under, let's say, the unitization and unit operating agreement, which stipulate that we will start by 50-50, so from the production side and also from the expenditure side. So this is a little bit complicated in order to get all the involved parties agreed on the same, let's say, way forward. So let's move on now to the technical aspects. So for the challenge, the first one is to maximize the use of the existing infrastructure. Why? Because if we develop Zarat as a standalone project, this will cost approximately, let's say, $3 billion. The second challenge is how to treat and to remove this CO2 and H2S, at which level, and also where to sequestrate and inject this sour gas, because we are not allowed to flare it. The third challenge also is regarding the reservoir management scheme, so either the blowdown or the recycling, gas recycling, and this because it has an impact on the recoverable reserves, and this will be, let's say, discussed later on. Finally, by, let's say, answering all those questions, we will need to, let's say, select the most appropriate development scheme that could be the cost-effective from the economic and technical point of view. For the reservoir, so as I said, we have two scenarios, either the blowdown, so is to produce gas from day one, or the second option is the recycling. The recycling is, let's say, 5 to 7 years period that we inject in continuous the gas. This will increment, let's say, the recovery by, let's say, 10%, let's say 10 to 12 million equivalent barrel. So what we have for move directly to the outcomes of the economical side. So the 1C is stipulating recycling, so with a capex of $1.8 billion, and this will get a net present value of, let's say, around $700 million. For the blowdown, it's lower as capex since we have not the, let's say, well injectors, and this will give something around 880 million MPV for the project. So anyway, by this, we have selected, let's say, the blowdown. Also from the strategic point of view, as I said, so we are a gas demand country, so it's better to get the gas from day one. So finally, this is the production profile. From the liquid side, it will be something around 20 to 25,000 barrels a day. And for the sales gas, it will be around 70 million SCAF. 70 million SCAF, that means that we are producing 200 million SCAF a day as a raw gas. This is so after treatment and so on. So for the recoverable reserve, we'll get around 80 million barrels of liquid, oil and condensate. The sales gas is something around 300 billion scf. Also, we made some, let's say, optimization in order to recover the LPG. So we'll produce around 500,000 tons during the life cycle. This will lead for a total equivalent of 134 million barrels. The second, let's say, main challenge is how to treat this CO2 and where to inject it. So we took, let's say, the worst case. That means that we have made all the simulation based on 48% of CO2 as concentration. And since 2013, let's say, we made a joint study in order to seek where we can sequestrate this sour gas, and also what is the technology needed, etc., for this removal. So the phase one concluded that the most viable storage field for sequestration are the depleted gas reservoir, mainly Miskar and Azrubal. Miskar has the capacity of 60 million tons for sequestration, Azrubal around 20 million, and also the Ashtart oil field, something around 30 million tons as capacity. Knowing that from Zarat, if you remove this gas, etc., we will get something around 14 million tons. So the capacity for sequestration is here. So this is okay. The second phase was conducted in order to understand what is the suitable technology that we have to use in order to remove this, let's say, sour gas. And the conclusion was to use especially the membrane technology. And later on also we have looked at on which level we have to, let's say, to make this treatment. And the optimum one is 14%. Why 14%? Because the Hannibal treatment plan of the Miskar field can, let's say, handle such gas with 14% of CO2. And also from the economic point of view, if we go from 48% to 0%, this is very costly. So ideally is to, let's say, get this synergy from the existing field and Miskar field. But here, just for the why we have chosen the membrane technology, because they are can be modularized. Their space and weight, let's say, they are efficient for the offshore application. Also, from similar scale and duty analog, this has been, let's say, proven as a good one, especially in the East, in Malaysia and Indonesia. So, let's now move to the which, let's say, plan of development we have to, let's say, adopt it. For that, we have identified a lot of scenarios, and we made, let's say, an option screening and assessment based on different selection criteria, and we lead to 3 options, let's say, leading 3 options. Those options are mainly a fixed, let's say, installation, and the connection will be, let's say, the export through Miskar platform and the existing pipeline, and the final treatment will be made in Hannibal. The second option, which is the FPSO, so this has been, let's say, considered to see what is the impact, let's say, by getting those scenarios. Finally, so this is the cost estimate. All the options we are talking about are on the range of 1.6, 1.7 billion dollars as investment. From the OPEX side, let's say the FPSO for sure will be much more important in terms of OPEX, because there is this lease boat and the crewing and the certification, etc. So and then we went through the economics using the fiscal terms of both the Zarat license and the joint oil block, and this gives us, let's say, the following net present values. Really, for a project that will be, let's say, for 20 years life cycle or even more, because we are intending to use, let's say, Zarat, as I said, later on to unlock the development of the other fields. So the case of the FPSO has been not, let's say, considered, because even, let's say, if we took on a 5 years life cycle, each 5 years we need to make the classification, to go to the dry dock, to shut down the field, etc. So the most appropriate is to have fixed installation, which are, let's say, the platform basis. And then we use the option A for the phasing, so to start with 4 wells and on the second phase to drill the 3 others. This will give us the opportunity to understand, let's say, the behavior of the wells, and even to maybe to remediate on the surface facilities in case. So as we said, the most important, we have uncertainties on the concentration of the composition of CO2 and H2S. So the selected POD, as I said, it will be a phased one. So for the first 3 years, it will be something around 10,000 barrels a day. And by getting in production the phase 2, we can reach the 25,000 barrels a day oil and condensate. And from the gas, we will start with 100 million SCF raw gas, which gives us something around 30 million SCF a day as sales gas. And then on the second phase, we'll reach a plateau of 70 million SCF a day. This will need to produce, as I said, 7 wells. Let's say 5 horizontal above the gas oil contact to recover mainly the oil and condensate, and 2 crystal in order to recover the gas. So as I said, this will allow revision of the facilities, etc. for this phasing. This is the well implementation. So in the first phase, we'll put in production 4 wells, and then we will continue putting the 3 others. So this is here the, let's say, the preferred option description. So we have the platforms. We'll get it's drilling and production platform. So all the treatment will be made on top. The stabilized oil and condensate will be exported to the FSO. The gas, let's say the sour gas, 100% CO2, will be sent to the MISCAR platform for injection and sequestration. And the second pipeline, which is gas with 14% CO2, will be sent through the existing pipeline to Hannibal plant. This is the flow diagram, the same. So here we have, as I said, so this optimization in order to recover the LPG in the Hannibal treatment plant. This will give us something around 100 tons per day butane propane and more than 1,000 barrels a day of condensate. From the economical aspects, so based on an oil price of $80, so we can get a net present value of around $700 million, and this is very, very good. Also, we made all the necessary sensitivities on the production, on oil price, on even the project delay, CAPEX and OPEX, and the project is still robust. Conclusion. So, from the technical aspect, let's say this project is feasible. Economically, also, it's very attractive. Now, what is needed, let's say, we need to go through FEED in order to assess, let's say, these scenarios and to put it, let's say, in place. Also, we need an agreement with Shell because we are, let's say, making all the assumption based on the use of the MISCAR and Hannibal, or let's say, all the infrastructure related to MISCAR. So for that, we will need an agreement for the tarification. And finally, so the development of Zarat would, let's say, unlock, as I said, the development of the, let's say, other discoveries in the Gulf of Gabes area. Just here a few slides. So we have Zarat, we have Elisa also discovery that we can, let's say, tie it into Zarat. We have Salambo, we have Jugarta, Tirais, etc. So this could be good for Tunisia, and let's say we can get a plateau for the next, let's say, 20, 30 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bugasha. Also very clear. Thank you. We have time for questions.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation. On the unitization of the two blocks over the field, obviously there's a unit area that's been agreed between both parties. Who is actually appointed the unit operator? Will it be ETAP or some joint team? Not joint team, a combined team, let's say that.
Yeah, good question. So, just I'm going back to this slide showing both, yes, that's it. So the idea is to, when getting, let's say, the new operator for joint oil, is to have, let's say, to agree on a joint development agreement.
The unit area should have one operator.
Exactly. This is the idea, but we need, let's say, that to involve, let's say, ETAP, because if we see here, ETAP, we have 100% in the south. Also, we are 50% in joint oil. So the idea is to get a joint development. For sure, it will be one operator, but with the team of ETAP annexed to this.
Thank you. The other question is more technical in nature. I noticed on your development plan, you had provision for a number of horizontal wells positioned, was it 10 meters below the gas oil contact? Do you foresee a situation where you can manage the gas inflow into those horizontal wells and minimize the gas and to maximize the liquid recovery?
Yeah, this has been, let's say, assessed. I'm not, let's say, the reservoir engineer, guys, but for sure this has been assessed, and that's why we are, let's say, putting the, let's say, the wells on 10 meters above the gas oil contact. This in order to avoid, let's say, the gas flooding, etc. This is
and my final question, perhaps the most controversial one. It seems to me from your final part of the presentation that the critical path depends on an agreement with Shell, and you said it has not been put in place. I would assume, though, that you have started these negotiations. They just haven't completed yet.
Normally, we have a meeting planned for next week with Shell. But the idea, what we have, let's say, done, we have considered a tarification on our OPEX, which is, let's say, with the international benchmarking. So this is on the standards. What we need to, let's say, further discuss with Shell, because by injecting the CO2, this could be enhanced gas recovery in Miscar. So we have to maybe, yeah, to negotiate.
Okay, yeah, let's give the opportunity to another person to ask your question.
What we know from Zarat field, that this field is very rich in sour gas. And there is only 3 wells drilled in this field. And there is no extended well test in this field. Yeah. And you show us the net present value, even for the low case, is still positive. Do you have a program to perform additional study, I mean for value of information, to de-risk this P90 case before to go to the field development plan? And the second question, it's not wealthy to add also the other satellite field existing in the Zarat block.
Okay, thank you for the question. So for the first, so regarding, let's say, the appraisal, let's say, of the field or the discovery, 3 wells has been developed, has been drilled and tested. Their DST shows good results. Yes, maybe we have to go to the north in order to assess more, because the southern part is well appraised, but it's not the case for the northern. But anyway, let's say the phased approach that we are, let's say, putting in place, this is in order to understand the behavior and what is maybe the, let's say, surprise getting from the reservoir. No, your idea is good to invest something, let's say, on the $1.6 billion need to be well assessed. But what I said from, let's say, the subsurface team, they are, let's say, they make a good job. Also, there is surrounding fields with the same reservoir. So here we have, let's say, a good appreciation, let's say, understanding for the El Garia reservoir. So we have, let's say, to decide to go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think we have to move to the fourth presentation to keep on time.
Mohammed. We will move to the second presentation, the fourth presentation of today, the last one. It's a long name. Integration of satellite images for seafloor geotechnical analysis, high-resolution bathymetric maps, and seismic data to discuss existence of offshore petroleum system in the north of Egypt. This study was conducted jointly by ETAP and CVA Group. And just to mention the names who will be participating in this study: Mr. Jamel Smawi, Beatrice Nevanak, Sylvie Giroux, Pauline Vincent, Anis Belhaj, Bernard Garetou. Et ce papier sera présenté par Monsieur Christophe Rigolet. Monsieur Christophe Rigolet, c'est un geologist. He got his PhD in 2001 at the École des Mines de Paris. He joined and worked successfully in many companies like Total, Gaz de France, BMC, very big company. So I'll give you the floor, Monsieur Christophe, to get this presentation for us.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Is it possible to see my presentation, please? Thank you. Yes, as you said, it will be a presentation about oil seeps. We did this project with our colleagues and friends of ETAP, managed by Jalel Smawi, and with, in particular, the geochemist expert of ETAP, Mr. Anis Belhaj. It was a joint study between ETAP and CVA, founded by the World Bank. CVA is a French consulting company specialized in integrated studies for oil and gas industry. Yes. The main question was to know if North Desert offshore, we have the equivalent in terms of petroleum system of all this South Rock identified onshore Tunisia. For that, we used mainly satellite images, seismic lines, seafloor samples with geochemical studies, analysis, and bathymetry map. As a reminder, oil seeps are natural leaks of oil and gas that migrates up through the seafloor and ocean depths to the surface. In this study, we used satellite images to track this oil seep. It means this oil slick at the sea surface. Oil seeps present specific shapes. It can be these coma shapes, as this example in California coast, or parallel and tortuous elongated shapes, as this example in West Africa, or this beautiful flower shape over time in Congo margin. Oil leakage is not a continuous phenomenon, but can be repetitive. In this case, very similar oil slips appear in the same area over time. To perform this study, we proposed a methodology in 5 steps. First, the satellite image selection, then the differentiation of natural and anthropogenic oil slicks. Anthropogenic is to say vessel pollution. Third, the oil slicks classification and oil slick repetition map. And at the end, the integration of these satellite images with other geological data. First step, we selected 513 images in the study area offshore north of Bizerte. These data come from the satellite Sentinel-1 from the European Space Agency, and we work in the time window between 2014 and 2017. It means during 3 years. The resolution of this satellite image is around 20 meters. The final selection of 143 images is in this black polygon, that is our area of interest. If we reach our target with 50 dates in this area of interest, it corresponds to the red surface. Oil slick on the sea surface may have 2 main origins in this area. The anthropogenic origin, it means vessel pollution, as this example on the left here, the vessel pollution behind the vessel, or natural oil seeps due to oil reservoir leakage, as this example here in the Santa Barbara offshore. Anthropogenic oil slicks on satellite images have very specific shapes. In general, it is this straight, elongated shape, and sometimes it's possible to see the vessel, this bright white dot, in line with the pollution line. We observe oil slicks from other origins in Tunisia, as for example, these slicks here due to fish cages. In this 3 years window, we observe 48 anthropogenic oil slicks in the area of interest. First, all oil slicks have been mapped without distinction between anthropogenic and natural oil slicks. On this map, you have both info, the vessel location, it corresponds to the black dots. It's useful to display the north and south what is it? Sorry. Yes, to see the north and south maritime traffic lanes, and in green, all these oil slicks without distinction between anthropogenic and natural oil slicks. It's interesting to see the high density of oil slicks along the maritime traffic lanes. You can anticipate that it's due to vessel pollution and not to oil seeps. Sorry. After vessel pollution removal, the remaining oil seeps distribution is not influenced by the maritime traffic lines, with these distributions, and seems to be random. At this stage, we retain 209 potential oil seeps in the study area. The next step is the classification of these remaining oil seeps after vessel pollution removal. The main shape is this tortuous elongated shales, but we can observe sometimes only sinuous elongated shapes and these parallel features. Floor shapes are not observed in Tunisia. The next step consists on the identification of repetitive oil seeps. The repetitiveness in the same area can be quantified by a specific workflow and displayed on a repetitiveness map. At the end of the workflow, we have this map, these pixels, and the color correspond to the superposition between two oil seep occurrence over time. At the end, we have this type of map where hottest colors correspond to the location where oil seeps appear many times in the same area over time. Concerning the distribution of these oil seeps, it's clearly not a random distribution. It's not controlled or constrained by the vessel transition. You see that this trend doesn't follow the maritime traffic lines. We observe this clear southwest-northeast trend and 100 kilometers north desert, this cloud, located cloud of oil seeps. Now, the next step consists of the integration of the satellite image analysis and other geological data. First, we did a structural map from this bathymetry map, offshore North Desert. You can see Desert here. And using this bathymetric map and combining this map with seismic line, we did structural interpretation. It is all these black segments. We observe two main results. First, we observe this southwest-northeast trend, general trend, and this high structural feature here, this high structural high, 100 kilometers northeast Desert. Now, if we superpose the structural information from the bathymetry and from the geological map with our oil seeps, we observe this parallelism between the oil seeps trends, southwest, northeast trends, and the regional structural trends. It is, I think, the main results of our study. Note that Anis Belhaj from ETAP did exactly the same observation in offshore environment. On the right map, each green star corresponds to onshore oil seeps. On the left, we have the structural map, and you can observe this parallelism between onshore oil seeps trend and onshore structural regional trend. He did exactly the same observation onshore that we did offshore. In addition, if we go more in details on the bathymetry map, we observe carbonate mounds or pockmarks. In particular, a beautiful field of pockmarks on this structural high where we observe this cloud of oil seeps. As you see this morning during the first presentation, you know that these pockmarks and carbonate mounds can be correlated to deep petroleum system. Concerning geochemical evidences, Anis shared with us the results of a big geochemical campaign offshore North Bizerte. We had 205 samples of the seafloors with 2 samples containing hydrocarbon. These 2 samples are these 2 stars here, with the first one with oil and the second one with gas. Concerning the oil sample, we observe in the same area, here is the location of the seafloor sampling. In the same area, we observe an isolated pockmark and a beautiful oil seep on the sea surface from satellite image. To conclude, the offshore north of Bizerte is an area to investigate more in detail in this area limited by the red polygon. Many convergent arguments support the presence of an active petroleum system in this area, the observation of oil seeps with these specific shapes, the repetition of these oil seeps occurrence over time, the presence of pockmarks on the bathymetry map, hydrocarbon indices on the seafloor, and the parallelism between the oil seeps trends and the regional structural trends. Thanks a lot for your attention. And thanks a lot to Jamel and the ETAP team for the quality of the work during these last months.
Thanks. Any questions?
Thank you. Can you show us the last slide, please? Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just first, I would like to emphasize that with Anis for Repsol, we conducted this huge work on the onshore area. Yeah. And we came to the conclusion that the stratigraphic occurrences of these oil seeps are within El Haria, within Boudabous, within Labiod, within the Fleesh Numidian. Therefore, we have these oil seeps everywhere in the stratigraphic column. And regarding the structural network, we tried, but we didn't focus really on this. We tried to check if there is some relationships between the fracture network and the occurrences of these oil seeps. We came to another conclusion, but it's not definitive. It was done for Repsol company when they are interested by the offshore area. My question for you and for oil companies. We are focusing on offshore Tunisia, and we know that there is many big issues, not about the geology only, but in addition for technical issue, because we are dealing in offshore. The work that we conducted for Repsol, the main conclusion was that beneath the Numidian fleece, we can reach the abiode and the Eocene carbonate rocks, well fractured, 2,500 meters below the Numidian Flysch, in the onshore. So, it's good to continue to invest in offshore. It's, perhaps there is a big baby there. But why we cannot start with 2 or 3 wells in the front of the Numidian Flysch and to check with the presence or not of oil within the abiode and the Eocene? I'm not thinking about the Numidian Flysch, which can be considered as the seal of the Cretaceous petroleum system. It's really, we thought a lot about these different issues: the source rocks distribution, the reservoir distribution, the kind of traps, the tectonic events. I terminate with this. So it's an invitation really for petroleum company to invest in northern Tunisia, in onshore Tunisia, and to check only with 3 wells if you have really some oils under the Numidian Flysch.
Thank you.
I think what has been done is good, but I'd like to shortly provide us some analog that has been used, this methodology to find fields in the offshore fields in the world, you know, especially the one in West Africa. Do you have an idea on such analogy that has been used and that was successfully resulted in very good discoveries, Christophe?
Yes, I don't have specific slides about that, but yes, it was my first slide, in fact. When I show this flower shape, it came from onshore Congo. It is this picture on the right from Total exploration campaign. And here it is the best case, because when over time in the same area you have the repetition of oil seeps with the same origin, if you have a change in the currents direction, you can observe this type of picture. It's not a picture, it is this flower shape, it's not on one peaks. It is on how to say, a repetition of peaks over time. It means each color corresponds to one event, and if you superpose all these events, you can observe the same origin. It means that you can identify clearly the source of the oil, and in this case, this oil seep is directly correlated with deep oil reservoirs, and it is one of the main discovery of Total offshore Congo. Okay. It's why somewhere we use this approach and this feedback from Total experience to apply the same methodology to Tunisian offshore exploration.
Okay, let's take the last question. Last question. I would like to thank you very much for this new approach. And from geological point of view, all the geologists, the Tunisian geologists, know very well that beyond this northeast-southwest major thrust fault, all the source rock, including Jurassic, Cretaceous, and Eocene source rocks, are gas prone. And here, based on the satellite image, or based on your approach, most of the oil seeps are dominated by liquid. There is no really a clear match between the basin modeling, the source rock evaluation performed on the onshore and close to this major lineament, and the results of the study. Do you have any explanation?
Yes, be careful, because with satellite images we can detect oil seeps only. We cannot detect gas bubbles if there is.
This is very good point. If we can find oil in the offshore, this will upgrade
sure. Sure, I agree. It's why the next step would be to sample these oil seeps to be sure.
Anyway, we ran out of time. We should be finished 10 minutes earlier. We have
Thanks
one more question, just one more question from this gentleman.
Yes.
Yeah, just one more question. Please keep it short.
This area has been picked over quite dramatically by various companies, Repsol, Shell, Anadarko, Petro-Canada. In your opinion, on the work that you've done, both looking on the onshore and the offshore, what is the hope and aspirations from what you've seen and sort of done technically in the area, in your opinion? Do you still feel there's still some potential as far as the offshore and the onshore is concerned from what you've done?
Not sure that I can answer. The best that I can say is that using this result, we can border a little bit the area for the next investigation. We are more in the approach to de-risk next investigations. And sorry, I cannot go further in the discussion.
Thanks, Mr. Professor. Thanks a lot. Anyway, we have a coffee break now, and the second session will resume in 4 rooms, and will be 4 rooms for the second session from now.